All right, so what we have here is an MTD Saratoga Deluxe 5-string bass guitar, and I'm really excited about this review because number one, it's MTD's version of a jazz bass, and I'm a big fan of jazz basses. And number two, I'm really excited about this video because it says MTD on the headstock. For gosh, years if not decades, I've always wanted an MTD bass, and now I have one, so that's very exciting. But it's also a little scary, to be honest with you, because every time I've ever watched a video online with somebody playing an MTD bass, they're just phenomenal. They're like 10 times better and skilled than I am. And so it's a little intimidating because now I'm thinking, oh gosh, you know, people are going to see me with an MTD bass and they're going to point at me and go, ooh, he must be really good because he's playing an MTD bass. And it's like, no, I'm just an average bass player, but I happen to have an MTD bass. So that makes it a little scarier because I feel like there's a heightened expectation on me. So the thing I want to point out is this is a review video of the bass and not my playing. If you really want to see some really good playing of an MTD Saratoga, just go on Google. I would say Google Justin Rains. That would give you a really good example of what an MTD Saratoga can sound like. Of course, it'll be a US version of the bass and a big price difference there, but it'll really kind of give you an idea of what a Saratoga can do. So for this video, this is another one of my everything videos, meaning it's everything about the bass. It's not just me get in front of you and playing some sound examples, although I'm going to do that. But the main focus on this video is going to be about, you know, if you're a potential buyer for this bass and you're Googling information on this bass, I want this video to be a video that answers all the questions that you might have about the bass before you buy it. Not just how it sounds, but also how it feels, what the construction quality is like, what the hardware is like, just everything possible about the bass that I can share with you, I'm going to do. So with that in mind, let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so let's talk about the neck of the bass. This bass is unique in that it uses MTD's asymmetrical neck. What does that mean? Well, instead of the bass being evenly curved on the back, this is going to be a little hard to explain, but basically the top portion of the neck along here is where most of the bulge is, where it actually, as you go down the neck this way, it's actually thinner. So when my thumb, the thickest part where the neck is basically, I would say, over the E string, it appears. And then it starts thinning out as you go to the A, continues to get thinner as you go to the D, continues to get thinner as you go to the G. The B string is also pretty thick as well. The E and the B seem to be where most of the mass of the neck is at, the reverse side of it. So that makes a unique feel to your hand when you're playing it. And it's, when I played MTDs in the store, they felt really good. But when I actually got the bass home, got this one home, it actually took a little bit more adjustment than I actually thought it would be. But it wasn't so much the actual asymmetrical neck that I was having a hard time with. It was more, it feels like the radius of the fretboard is very flat compared to most other basses that I've owned or played. And it tended to be the top two strings, the D and the G, tended to be the ones I was having a hard time accurately playing. Like when I'd be playing here and I maybe go up an octave, I was constantly not hitting right notes, at least for the first hour or two, until I really kind of adjusted to it. Once you adjust to it, it's fine, but it might feel a little weird for the first hour or so that you play it. But it's actually a very comfortable neck, and the asymmetrical is, ergonomically, it's wonderful. Also, the bass has a satin finish on the back, which is lovely. It's just absolutely wonderful. And so and also the frets are all very well done, of course. I think the wood is beautiful. To note, it doesn't have any fret markers on the actual frets themselves. It does have, of course, the fret markers on the top of the neck. So visually, if you're playing with a guitar player and he wants to look over and see what you're playing so he can follow along, he might be a little bit lost because he won't be able to see exactly where you are. But I find that for me as the player, though, you don't get lost on where you're at on the neck because these dots stand out really nicely on the maple neck. So I don't have any issues there. And really, when you're playing it, you're not really looking at the fretboard this way, you're looking at it this way, so you see those dots fine, and that hasn't caused me any problem playing. Of course, I had another bass that had the same type of arrangement, so it's not a big deal for me, and it's actually very, very easy to deal with the dots just on the top of the neck and not on the fretboard, but it's definitely something you need to know about. Make sure you realize that before buying it. Also want to mention that the string spacing on this bass is 19 millimeter. So it's nice and roomy, very comfortable to play. I love that string spacing, but if you're used to a tighter string spacing, it might be a bit of an adjustment for you, and either you'll like it or you won't. If you're used to playing like Stingray basses, which have a tighter string spacing, then this might feel really wide to you. The bass uses the Buzz Felton. Am I pronouncing it right? Is it Felton? Tuning system, which helps out with the tuning. Hey, all right. It's the first bass I've had with that setup, so yeah, seems like it works well. The bass has a 0 nut. First bass that I've had that has that, and basically what that means is, as you can see, the nut is here, but before that there's actually a fret. So instead of ending at a nut, the string ending at a nut, it actually ends at a fret, and then there's a nut. So that helps with making sure that there's consistency on the bass with all of the notes, including the open strings, that they sound the same as all of the other notes fretted elsewhere on the bass. There's a consistency there. So that's a nice feature. Also, since the neck is has the curve to it. It actually curves backwards, which again is the first neck that I've had that does that. And visually for me, took a little getting used to it. Just kind of looks wrong is the only way I can say it, because it doesn't go straight. It's like, yeah, my neck's broken. It's leaning backwards, but apparently that's a better way of routing the strings. And also you don't need a string tree, because the bend of the neck helps to align the strings properly there. So yeah, anyway, it's the first time I've had a neck like that, so it took a little adjusting to get used to. Also, it's something to take into consideration when you're using a case with the bass, especially a soft case, and I will visit that a little later in the video and show you some different cases and how the bass fits into it with that neck profile. Also, speaking of the neck, the headstock there, one thing I noticed, and it appears that the neck is made up of two pieces of wood here that have been glued together. Yeah, so I was kind of surprised by that. I actually don't think I've seen that on any other bass guitars before. I'm assuming it's MTD, so I'm assuming, hey, they know what they're doing and that it'll hold up well. And maybe that's something they have to do because of the curvature, or not the curvature, but the fact that the neck leans back. So maybe just it's something that they have to do for the wood. I don't know, but anyway, I wanted to point that out, trying to, again, give you as much information about the bass as possible and pointing out all details that I see on it. One thing real quick I want to mention on the fingerboard of the bass is I mean, it's just maple, but I just really like the way the wood grain looks on it, the tight spacing of it. I don't really know how to call the figuring on that, what it is, but it just aesthetically it's very nice. Also mentioning on the, how I mentioned that the fretboard seems very flat. It just seems different than any other bass that I have. One thing I have kind of struggled with is I find that it's harder to mute notes on this bass than on other basses, because I tend to hear a lot more ringing notes on this bass than any other bass I play. I tend to, at least I think I have pretty good muting technique, but for some reason on this bass it doesn't transition as well, so I'm having to really focus on making sure I'm cleanly muting strings that I'm not playing. So that's something to keep in mind. Again, this bass definitely points out any flaws that you have in your technique, or at least makes you have to improve any techniques that you have, even if you don't have flaws in it. It definitely makes you work for it. It's like, yeah, you need to step up your game. So that's an area where this bass is telling me I got to step up my game, is on my muting, and because it definitely shows when I don't do, at least, again, I don't know if it's bad technique or if it's just I haven't adjusted to this particular bass fully, but yeah, I'm not muting as well on this bass as I am on other basses. So again, something else to keep in mind. And so the bass has 21 frets on it, and the upper frets are pretty easy to access compared to a regular jazz bass. It just, the way the design is on it, they've made it very easy to get to those upper frets. Also, I want to point out that this bass is a 34 scale bass, just like a jazz bass would be, a traditional jazz bass. And I have to say, while that's perfectly fine, I was actually kind of, now that I own a 35 scale bass in my Lakeland, I really would have, I think I would have preferred if this was 35 inches. I think that would a 35-inch scale. And plus, pretty much all other MTD basses, full-size MTD basses, are 35 scale. So I would have liked to have had a 35 scale neck on this, but yeah, every standard jazz bass has 34, so it's in line with that. It's just, me personally, I think it would have been cool to have a 35 scale, now that I realize I like 35 scale necks. The access to the truss rod is behind this plate right here. So you take this plate off, there's two screws, one here and one here. You take that off and then you can get access to the truss rod. I will take that off so you can see what that looks like underneath that plate. I will say I think people either don't mind the plate or they hate the plate because they think it messes with the aesthetics. I don't mind it so much, but I can see how some people can have an issue with this big black thing, a piece of plastic here, messing up the top of the bass. But it's not too terribly bad aesthetic-wise, but yeah, it's definitely, you know, it's a piece of plastic there. So yeah, I can see the complaint. So the body of the bass is basically the offset J bass style, which I really like. I find that to be just the most comfortable style of bass to play. But they've definitely, it's not a traditional looking bass by any means. They've definitely modernized it a lot. I like how they've really made the, I call them the horns of the bass. They've really made the horns a lot more sleek looking, very aerodynamic looking. They've also have some interesting contours here that they've cut into the bass itself to kind of give it these additional lines here, which is interesting. What I should note is the contour where you normally would have your arm here on a jazz bass. It's not the same. This bevel or whatever you want to call it. It's a little bit shorter. I guess shorter, I don't know if that's the right word to use for it, but it doesn't have as long of a gradual pitch to it. It's more of just an immediate shorter pitch right here. I don't think it really impacts the feel too much. Maybe a little bit. I would like to have it be more like on a traditional jazz bass where it's a little bit longer and gradual in its pitch. I think that would make it more comfortable there, but we're just talking about some minor things here. Also, the back of the bass, it's got I guess you call it the belly cut, and that's very comfortable. One thing that's a little interesting is this area right here. It's a little bit more, there's a point there. It's not as gradual there either. I mean, it's very big belly cut, but this isn't as gradual there, so it might seem like it would kind of poke at you a little bit, but I don't find that that's an issue for me. But again, my body size might be a lot different from other people's body size, so I don't know how well that will transition to everybody's body size. Like I said, I find it to be a very comfortable bass, so I don't notice any point or jab here, but it is just kind of interesting how much of a point there is there. Not that it's sharp, that's not what I'm trying to say. It's definitely a hump there, which is kind of unusual, but it's very comfortable. And speaking of comfortable, it plays great sitting down. This is a very comfortable bass playing sitting down. I actually think it's more, to me, it's more comfortable playing sitting down than standing up in my opinion, but it definitely is fine standing up. I love the flamed maple top on it. I've always wanted a flamed maple top on an instrument, like since the 90s. Yeah, but it took me this long to finally get one, and I think it looks very nice, very classy look to it. And it also, of course, has the matching headstock as well, which is also equally classy looking. And what else can I tell you about the body? Yeah, I mean, well, let's tell you about this. A few things back here. Let's look at the way the neck attaches to the body. You're dealing with 4 screws here, like you would on a traditional jazz bass. But it does have this slope right here where these two are at to kind of help make the upper access to these frets a little bit easier. There's a little bit of a slant there. And then I'll take these off too so we can take a look in this control cavity. But you've got 3 screws here to take this off. But here's what's really interesting is you've got 2 screws to take off the battery compartment. And that's the one design element on this bass that I'm a little disappointed at. Having to take out a screwdriver anytime you want to remove or change the battery is, I don't quite understand the logic of that, especially when every other active bass I've had has the ability to just pop it out really quick. So it's a little bit of an odd choice there. That being said, you typically don't change batteries that often, and I tend to use the passive mode a lot anyway, so it's not as big a deal to me, but still something that you should be aware of. If you're a gigging bassist and you like to have a battery handy just in case your bass dies in the middle of a performance, it's going to be a little bit tricky to stop and get a screwdriver out and change out the battery. However, since you've got a passive mode switch on it, you've got this active passive switch, switch in the passive, and you should be good to go and complete your gig. But if you're relying on your EQ to get the bass tone that you want, then you might be a little bit disappointed to have to switch to passive. But again, I use passive. I tend to use a preamp pedal for the most part to get my EQ settings. So to me, that's not of a big deal, but again, something I want to make sure you're aware of if you're buying the bass, that you do have 2 screws in order to get to the battery. All right, let's talk about the finish on the bass. I mentioned that there's a satin finish on the neck, which is really nice to play, but the rest of the bass is also satin finish as well. This is not a glossy bass. It is a satin finish all throughout the entire body itself. I think that's a beautiful look. I kind of, as I get older, I'm less liking the shininess and just liking that more matte type of finish, which I think is really classy. That being said, I don't know how that will transition as far as durability. The gloss finish is probably going to be more durable, I do believe. I could be wrong on that, but I believe that over time, it's possible a lot of satin finishes will kind of get glossy with wear. The MTD Saratoga, Kingston Saratoga that I saw in a store before buying this one that I was interested in buying, it was a bit older. It played really nice, but it was probably about 10 years old based on, again, on the serial number. And it had a lot of kind of glossiness on the surface. The base, though, that had definitely been played hard. It had a lot of, it tended to look like it had a lot of abuse on it. But yeah, so just know that probably over time, you'll probably get some glossy spots where you have the most contact with the base. And I don't know how well it'll handle, you know, resistance to scratches and things like that. On my particular base, again, I don't know if this is what it was like when I got the base, or if these are new blemishes since I've gotten it, but you can see some marking along here and here on the base. I don't know what it's from, and again, I don't know how long it's been there. I don't know if I, like I said, if I did it, or I don't think so, because I can't see how I could have caused that. But anyway, there is some small marking on there. I don't know how much abuse it was required in order to get that marking, but just bear in mind, satin finish, it may not be as durable as a gloss finish, but it sure does look pretty cool. The location of the input jack is, of course, right there. And the bridge is, I like the bridge. This is the first bridge I've had that's a quick release, which I think would be really cool to be able to try out different strings on the bass, because then you don't have a string tree, you have a quick release, you can just take the strings straight off, save them for later, and try some different strings. And then if you want to put back the old strings back on, boom, put them right back on. You don't have to try and fit it through, you know, different things and string trees and through the body, or, you know, through the little tiny hole and wrap it around. So yeah, it should be easy to change strings, and so I'm looking forward to using this bass to experiment with different strings. Also want to clarify that the strap pegs on this bass are not the original ones that came with it. I did upgrade them to Dunlop locking strap pegs, because that's what I've pretty much started standardizing to on all my basses. So I don't recall the original strap pegs that were on it, but you know, standard strap pegs, you're probably going to change them to whatever you use anyway. One thing I like about the Dunlops is that since it kind of, when you plug your strap into it, it actually brings the strap out about a ½ inch or an inch from the body of the bass, and it actually, not by a huge margin, but it actually helps a little bit with the balance of the bass, whatever bass you put those strap locks on. And so that's one of the reasons why I've been using them. I like the fact that it kind of helps with the balance of all the basses that I put them on. So something to keep in mind. I know there's other strap lock systems out there, and there's some good ones out there, but the Dunlops in particular are cool because it kind of helps also with the balance of bass. Not that it's a major thing that's going to have an impact on the bass, but it's at least enough where you can actually notice it to some degree. All right, so the pickups, as you can see here, jazz bass style pickups. Now, according to MTD's website, they are hum canceling pickups. Do keep in mind though, even though I can't get any noise out of them here in the studio, I do get noise out of them when I'm on stage at church. But of course, I get noise from a number of basses at church. I think that has a lot to do with the lighting and different things like that. So I can't necessarily blame the bass. And this is definitely not the most hum-inducing bass out of all the ones that I have. And most all the basses that I have that have some type of hum are more the single coil basses, although I get something out of all of them. So anyway, here in the studio, I can't get any noise out of them. They're pretty quiet. So I think they're better than average, but don't expect any pickup to be completely noiseless, especially because there's so many things that impact noise in the environment that you're in, and electrical interference and everything else, all that stuff. So anyway, just know that you might still get some hum from them, but they are hum canceling pickups. They are, of course, then you've got the active passive controls, which I really like this setup a lot. The only thing I wish that it had that it doesn't have is I wish it had a sweepable mid. That would be very helpful. However, on this bass, I'm pretty much just using passive mode and using it like a traditional passive jazz bass, because I have a preamp with EQ that I can set up as need be. However, I'll go ahead and walk through the controls on this. There's a switch right here, and this indicates whether it's in passive or active mode. When it's up, it's in passive. When it's down, it's in active. And let's move it up to passive first. When you're up in passive, basically these two knobs are all that impact the instrument. And now this one right here is actually a stack knob. So even though you got what looks like two knobs here, it's actually three different controls since this one's stacked. The top of this stack is a volume. We're turning it up and down. The bottom part of the stack is for the tone, passive tone cutoff. And also it's worth noting that this passive tone cutoff works both in passive and active. So that's a nice little touch there. And then this is your balance knob in order to balance between the blend between the two pickups, which I prefer a blend knob versus two volume controls. Now when you switch it down to active mode, this is now your bass frequency volume control. This is your mid frequency volume control, and this is your treble frequency volume control. They do have center detents. I can put them in the center detent there. They're all in the center detent. And let's turn up the volume. I'm just playing through my amp here. I'm not through the system yet. That's completely, like I said, all the EQs at center detent. If I switch it to passive, so as you can see, the volume appears to be, and the tone appears to be pretty much exactly the same, regardless of whether I'm in active and passive. However, once I'm in active, I'm down in active. Now if I just say, if I crank up the bass, ooh, that's a lot of bass. And so now I switch to passive. Now you're going to hear a difference because the passive doesn't have the EQ applied to it. So obviously you can get a much different sound by switching between the two. So you actually could use the active passive in order to set up two different bass sounds and just use the switch to flip between them. So that's one cool thing that you can do. As far as the frequencies of each of these EQ knobs, I'll admit I don't have that information. I have emailed MTD for that information. I'm hoping that I can get that from them. But otherwise, they're pretty well set. Again, I wish I had a sweepable mid just because I find that to be extremely flexible. But here's, again, that's center detent. This is with the mids up. Bring the, I'm sorry, that's with the mids down. Oh no, that's with the mids up. Sorry, now the mids are back to neutral, highs up. So obviously you can get a lot of top end out of that, and here's with the bass all the way up. Here's with the mid all the way down. Doesn't have a whole lot of difference there from what you can tell versus up. Well, yeah, it does, sorry. Now bring the mid back to, okay, it is at neutral, and bring the treble all the way down. And do I have the tone? Oh, I don't have the tone knob all the way up. Now the tone knob's all the way up. I had it somewhere roughly in the middle there. So if I turn the treble all the way up with the tone knob all the way up, so I can get very trebly. And then here's the treble knob all the way down with the tone knob all the way down. So I can get also very smooth type of bass sound. You can then add some mids. Get more of a, add a little bit more tone. Doesn't take much and it starts getting really bright again. So usually I'm actually finding with this bass, I don't bring the tone knob as much as I would on another bass because it quickly starts really getting top heavy. So even not quite all the way down, but a little bit up. So there you go. I'll give you some actual sound examples of playing a song with different EQ settings, but I just wanted to kind of quickly walk through what each one of those settings does for you. One of the things I wanted to demonstrate about this bass is the fact that it sounds really good just unplugged. I mean, you just pick it up and it's not even plugged in, and just acoustically it sounds really good. So I wanted to try and record it unplugged with a microphone, but honestly I listened back to it and it was just you hear so much string noise that it's just really impossible to get a good recording of it this way. But I did try. So I just at least wanted to make a note to you so that you do know that the bass sounds really good. Out of all the basses I think I've ever owned, this is probably one of the top basses as to how it sounds unplugged. So it does have a good organic sound to it naturally. If you're wondering how the bass balances on a strap, it actually does quite well. If I stand up, it balances pretty good. I get a little bit of pull on the shoulder there from it, but to be honest, it balances better than really any of my other jazz basses that I have. I have 3 other basses that fall into the jazz bass category. However, it is definitely not as good on balance as my Ibanez EHB. Nothing, it really is. I mean, it's kind of hard to beat a headless bass as far as balance goes. And then also my Lakeland 5501 is a little bit better on the balance as well. But this is definitely one of the better balanced basses that I've owned, and it's really not too bad. So I would say that, yeah, it's definitely above average on balance. All right, so I want to talk about cases for the bass. Now, in the last few years, I've definitely migrated away from hard shell cases. They're just overkill for my needs because I'm just taking my bass to and from my car, from home, and then when I get to church, I take it out and go into church with it. I don't need a hard case for that, and really the soft cases are a lot easier to deal with. They're a lot lighter. They do just as good a job, and they're easier to carry. Lately, I've really liked the Groove Gear Edge series, which I've used a lot for my basses. One of the reasons I like it so much is because of the shoulder strap. Keeps it at a low profile so that the bass is not sticking way up over your head. So when you go through, through a doorway, you're not smacking the top of the bass on the top of the door frame. However, I would not recommend cases like this, a standard clamshell type case for this bass. And the reason for that is because this bass has a slanted head on it, and because of that, I don't know how well you can see it on camera, the MTD is in here, but it's kind of bowing back this portion of the case. And to be honest, I wouldn't trust that. I don't know if it actually will have any impact on the bass, but me personally, I would not trust that. So instead of using this case, I definitely recommend the case that MTD makes, which I have here. Get this out of the way. This would be MTD's soft case, and the reason why I like it for the bass, let me put the bass down here so I can show you the inside of the case. It's got this big open area here for the fact that the neck slants backwards. It's also got a support here for the neck so that when the bass is sitting in the case, there's no force against the case itself with the headstock. It's kind of floating free, I guess you can say, within this area. So if I put this in here, it's kind of a step up from a typical clamshell case, more like a hard shell case in a way, but soft, if that makes sense. But as you can see here, keeps the neck nice and straight, and so it's definitely, in my opinion, a good case to use for the bass. The only downside is because it's your typical backpack type straps on it, the bass does tend to stand up high behind you. So you got that issue going on, but it has a very nice front open area here, case that you can put a lot of stuff in. And you've got this bonus pack up here up top. So I find that it really works really good for storing everything that I need to take with me, whereas that's one of the downsides of the Groove Gear case. I love the case, but it doesn't give you a lot of storage area, where this gives me pretty much all that I need. So wanted to throw that out there. If you are getting an MTD bass, I do highly recommend the MTD case that they offer directly from MTD. So check it out. All right, this is something of interest that I wanted to show you. This is my Fender Jazz Bass case with my Fender Jazz Bass inside. And obviously everything fits as should. It's the case that came with the bass from Fender, so yes, it's obviously going to be a perfect fit for a Fender Jazz Bass. Now what's interesting is if you try other different types of jazz bass instruments from other manufacturers in the same case. It's not quite a perfect fit. That doesn't quite go down in there. It's a little misshapen a little bit. This horn's a little, I got space where my finger can go there, a little bit of space there, a little bit of space there. The body seems to be a tad wider here, so it doesn't quite go in. These tuning pegs are rubbing up against the side of the case there, so it's not quite a fit. You definitely can't close the case with this bass in it. However, if I try the MTD Kingston Saratoga, which is a jazz bass style instrument, and it fits right down in there. And the headstock here, even though it's slanted back, it's not touching the bottom of the case here. Only thing is though, you've actually got a lot of play. I can move the instrument back and forth, move it around a whole lot. I don't know how much you can see it on the camera. And you can just tell that the instrument is a trimmer version of a jazz bass, because I literally have about that much spacing here. I've got a whole heck of a lot of spacing here. I've got at least an inch spacing here. I've got spacing back here, here. So it's definitely fits. I don't know if I would feel comfortable carrying this bass in here, but dimension-wise, it does work within the Fender case for a jazz bass. And it also helps to demonstrate the fact that the body of the instrument is a slight bit trimmer than an actual Fender jazz bass. All right, so since even though you get the same exact model, there are variables in the bass itself, and I want to make sure you understand what my sample is and what my variables are. Like for example, I believe this particular bass was built in 2021 based on the serial number, if I understand it correctly. However, I did send an email to MTD to see if I could clarify that, and if I do get feedback from them, I'll put that actual date that they mentioned on the screen. So if you don't see it on the screen, that means I didn't hear back from them. And so I think that's the year when it was built. Also, I believe that I have Ernie Ball Slinkies on the bass. The reason I say that is because I bought it used, and these are the strings that came with it, and they still sound fresh. Even though I've had the bass for about 3 or 4 months now, they still sound fresh, so I'm still keeping the same strings on them until they wear out. And I've been playing Ernie Ball Slinkies for about 25 years, so I'm pretty familiar with them. These look like Ernie Ball Slinkies, they feel like Ernie Ball Slinkies, and they sound like Ernie Ball Slinkies, so I think I'm 99% sure that they're Ernie Ball Slinkies. They're also a light gauge version of whatever strings they are. Again, I think they're Slinkies, but they're definitely a very light gauge. And my bass, I think this comes in right around 9 pounds, which is a little bit on the lower end of the scale for this particular model, but I have seen them for less weight. I've seen them around 8.5 pounds. I think most of them, though, tend to be more in the low 9s or low to mid 9s on the weight. So this one's a tad lighter than most, but otherwise it's all stock. And I got it, of course, I'm recording this in February, or actually March 2024. I purchased the bass late 2023. I paid used on it, either $750 or $800, somewhere around there for the bass, and it also included a really nice MTD soft case. And I bought it actually at Guitar Center, which was surprising because I don't always have luck with finding instruments in good condition through Guitar Center, especially used ones, but this one came out great condition. I bought it online. Yeah, I haven't made any adjustments whatsoever to the bass. It plays perfectly fine, so I haven't made any changes there, so that's actually surprising and a nice surprise from Guitar Center. So I know they take a lot of heat sometimes online, but got to give them kudos in this instance where the bass showed up being almost like new condition, and yet it's a used, and I got a really good deal on it. Now, I think they're, at this time that I'm recording this, I think they retail for around $1,100, $1,200 new, somewhere in that ballpark. But if you're watching this video years from now, then it might be a completely different price. But that's that's how much I paid for mine. The used price I'd mentioned, either $750 or $800. But anyway, that's my particular sample. I just wanted to make sure you knew what the variables are. Obviously, if you're using different strings, it might sound a bit different, but just want to make sure you knew what my sample was like so that you can use that when comparing to other ones. Here's the two headstocks side by side. You can see how much smaller the Kingston is. Definitely helps with weight. No zero nut. Zero nut. All right, I'm going to remove the truss rod cover. There is one screw here, and there's one screw here, and that's what holds it on. All right, so that is what the truss rod cover looks like taken off. As you can see, a lot of unfinished wood in here. Of course, you wouldn't really expect it to be since it's covered up. You just need to take this cover off whenever you need to get to this truss rod to make the truss rod adjustment. So, you know, it took a minute to take it off. Not a huge big deal, but not as convenient as having it always accessible like on other bases, but there you go. All right, now let's take off the control cavity plate. It has 3 screws, 1, 2, 3. And also the battery compartment cover, 2 screws, 1, 2 right here, and see what that looks like. Okay, here it is with the covers off. I will admit this particular screw right here gave me a lot of trouble. It was trying to not want to come out, so I was trying not to strip the screw head. But it took some doing to get this one off, but the other ones came out okay. First thing I want to notice is this battery. It's wrapped in this foam here, and it is just impossible to get out. It is really difficult. So you're gonna need to get like a flathead screwdriver or something and kind of carefully pry it out. And when I asked MTD about it, they had mentioned that a lot of it has to do with, I guess, the battery's
over the last few years have been getting a little bit pudgier, and so they're sticking in the control cavity a little bit tighter than they used to. So that appears to be the reason for that. And the actual control cavity here, this is what it looks like. It looks to me like there's some, what do you call it, some shielding paint on the internal cavity. Also, if you look at the back of the control plate, you can also see some shielding tape on there. And so that's what that looks like. Give you more of a close-up here. All right, seriously, I've been fighting with this thing for like 5 minutes now, trying to get it to come out. I've been also using a little screwdriver to try and gently prod it out, and it just, I can't get it. I'll keep playing with it, but it's a struggle. All right, I got it out. I think a lot of the reason why it's wedged in so tight is because of how much wrap is around this battery. So I think trimming that down would definitely help. And just a further proof that there is plenty of room in this cavity without the padding around the battery. So just adjust this padding and you should be fine.
Pros and cons of the Kingston Saratoga Deluxe bass. Pro, asymmetrical neck. It's very comfortable to play sitting down and just a wonderful feeling, non-fatiguing neck. Con, as dreamy as the asymmetrical neck is, it might not be for everyone. Pro, it requires you to be on point to play, so it improves your technique. Con, it requires you to be on point to play, not as forgiving. Pro, excels at complex music. Con, doesn't do well with simple music. Pro, it has the MTD pedigree. Con, it might be a little too boutique-y feeling for some. Pro, 34 scale neck. Easy to adapt for anybody else who's coming from a traditional bass. Con, 34 scale. MTD is really good at doing 35 scale basses, so it would have been nice to, have a MTD 35 scale on the bass. Pro, a great sounding active passive J bass rolled into one. Con, screw access battery compartment. Ugh. Pro, zero nut with quick release bridge for easy string swapping. Con, truss rod cover may be awkward and of lesser good fit and finish. Pro, satin finish is beautiful with matching headstock. Con, the satin finish is beautiful, but it may not hold up as long. To be determined. Pro, a fantastic modern upgrade of the classic J bass look and feel. Con, may be hard for fender-shaped object traditionalists to accept. So what is this bass most geared towards? Well, definitely since it's MTD pedigree, it definitely wants to play more elaborate music. So I think for modern CCM worship music or simple 3-chord, 4-chord rock songs, it kind of gets a little bored, and the bass just doesn't feel like it wants to sit in that simplicity. It really wants to be in a, something where there's more going on, whether it's gospel music, whether it's jazz and fusion and, stuff like that. Funk, it could probably do really well in as well. Anywhere where you're playing more notes and moving around a lot on the fretboard is where this bass really shines. So just wanted to mention that, because if you're playing simple music, you want a really nice jazz style bass, and you're playing really simple rock or simple contemporary Christian type music, then this bass might be a letdown for you, not because it's lacking in any quality whatsoever. It's just because it might not feel like it works for that genre, just because, again, it wants to do more. So for those types of styles of music, you might want something that's a bit more beefy of a sound, or this is more of a, I hate to use this kind of analogy, but if this were in a fight, this is more of a slice and dice, where other types of basses might be more of a fist punch kind of approach. So that's the difference between this bass and a lot of other types of basses. And that's kind of the case with a lot of jazz basses, is they make you work for it more. And but this one is definitely even more so than your typical jazz bass. It really wants you to work for the song. And if you've got a song where you don't have much to play, it's just not. It just doesn't seem to work as well for that. All right, so you're probably wondering, what is the difference between this Kingston Saratoga and the other Saratoga that's out there? I mean, MTD basses, you see them and they're like $7,000, $8,000, crazy numbers like that. And then you see this Kingston Saratoga and it's like $1,100, $1,200, and you're like, why is that? How can that be? Why is there such a huge difference between the pricing of these basses? Well, obviously this is an import bass. This is not a handcrafted bass in the US. It's similar to how Fender has their Squire line. Gibson has their Epiphone line. So this is the import version of the bass. So basically MTD has shipped this, they've shipped it in from China is where it's built. There's even a little note here on the back, made in China. So bear that in mind, this is a Chinese made bass. And like Lakeland, they have their Skyline series. I believe they do some setup of the bass when it comes in. They import it in. They do some setup before then it goes to market. I'm not sure if that's the case with the Kingston series here. I think it is. Don't quote me on that, but I think they at least do some final QC and setup in their actual their facility here in the U.S. But again, don't quote me on that. So that's one of the main big differences, is the country of origin. And so obviously a US made bass is going to have some better craftsmanship to it. So yeah, I would definitely prefer to own a US made MTD, but I just don't have the money for a US MTD. So sorry about that. But yeah, you still get a very good quality bass from the imports, and that's anything that's called Kingston is going to be one of those import basses, and that's why they're a lot less. One of the main reasons, because of country of origin. The other reason will be that probably not going to have the same components, and but really I think the craftsmanship is really more where the pricing is going to come into play. There is going to be some other differences between the basses. Like for example, on this Saratoga model, if you look at this, you can see the similarities with the US Saratoga, but there is a difference in the body and how it looks and how it's contoured. There's also a big difference in the headstock. All the US MTD basses have much different headstocks. All the Kingstons have more of this thinner, pointier headstock, whereas the US ones are a little bit more beefy looking. And also on their 5-string versions of the Kingstons, you have this 4-1 arrangement, where most of the MTD US made ones will have more of a 3-2 kind of layout. Also, with the differences between the Kingston and the US made basses is that the Kingstons are going to have a limited number of finishes available for it. So like for example, this particular MTD Kingston Saratoga is available in basically 2 finishes, 2 different styles, this kind of cherry burst, and then there's also like a gray charcoal burst. And so those are the only 2 finishes that are available, whereas the US MTDs, you can customize them however you want. And then the final thing that will be a difference between the US made basses and the Kingston line will be the woods used. I do believe that this is a basswood body. And you probably have, they might actually use basswood on the US ones, I'm not sure, but they probably have more variety of what you can pick from. I would definitely guess, since it's a custom shop, there's probably a lot of different types of wood that you can choose from, in addition to be able to choose from all kinds of different finishes and specialty tops, because there's some absolutely stunningly beautiful tops that they have on some of their US bases. But still, this is kind of a classic look, and so you can still, you know, if you don't mind picking between two different options with the Kingston line, you can still get a nice looking bass. It's also worth noting that there is an older model of the Kingston Saratoga that was made before the deluxe model came out, and the original version of it actually was completely passive. It didn't have an active option to it, and also it had the ones that I've seen have been a sunburst without the flamed maple top. It's just been like a standard sunburst look to it, and also would have a black painted headstock. But otherwise, it's pretty much the same bass. It just doesn't have the active electronics in it. It doesn't have the same finish, and it has a black painted headstock. So that would be the difference between the earlier model Kingston Saratoga and the current new one, which is the Kingston Saratoga Deluxe. All right, so what's my final assessment of this bass? Well, it's absolutely a fantastic instrument. I just absolutely love it. I think it's great. I can't say that it's my #1 bass right now out of the basses that I own. I probably say, just based on stylistically the music that I play and who I am as a bass player, probably my Lakeland fits me a little bit better as my #1 bass, but this is definitely, that's just a personal preference for me. There's no reason why this can't compete completely with any other bass I own, or probably any other bass in its price range. It's just a matter of, is it going to be the right bass for you? And hopefully you'll have a chance to play it before you buy it, but I know that that's not always the case, and that's probably why you're watching this video, is you don't have that opportunity. Hopefully I've explained it well enough that you will be able to determine if it is the right bass for you to buy. But no matter what, I think even if you buy it and it turns out to not be the right bass for you, I think you'll still appreciate it as a fine instrument. And hopefully, if it's not right for you, hopefully you'll be able to turn it around, and it should have a pretty good resale on it, and you hopefully won't lose much or any money on it on the resale, especially if you buy it used. But if you buy it new, you'll probably take a little bit of a hit there, as to be expected, but it shouldn't be that much, because these are good instruments, and they should keep their value pretty well. So I would say out of 5 tuner pegs, I would give this 5 tuner pegs. That's my stupid little rating system instead of stars. So yeah, I'm gonna give it 5 tuning pegs, and I think it's an excellent bass. I can't really fault it for anything other than the screws on the battery compartment, and I just think that I don't think that deserves to knock it down in any rating at all, because it's honestly, you're going to change a battery once every 6 months, once a year, something like that, especially if you're mostly using passive like me. So I can't really fault it for that. I just think it ideally should have a non-screwdriver required battery compartment there. But other than that, I really can't find a fault for it. The pickups sound great. The bass itself sounds fantastic. The feel of it is great. The neck is awesome. Again, it's just going to be a matter of whether it fits your preference as a bassist. But I appreciate you so much sticking around with me, watching this another long video that I did, another long review. I do lots of review videos, so definitely make sure to subscribe to this channel if this video was helpful for you. Also make sure to like it. And again, thanks for watching. God bless.